In this section, we will discuss the different penalties pertaining to the passing game. Illegal touching is the touching of the ball by either batting, muffing, or catching of a forward pass by an ineligible player. An ineligible player is any interior lineman or a player wearing the numbers 50 through 79. In order for this to be a foul, there needs to be an intentional act by the ineligible player. An ineligible player who is inadvertently hit by a forward pass has not committed a foul. However, if a quarterback hits an ineligible player with a pass intentionally while trying to escape pressure, has still committed intentional grounding. If the pass hits an official during the play, eligibility restrictions don't change. If an ineligible player attempts to contact the pass, it would still be illegal touching. Illegal touching is a 5-yard penalty and includes a loss of down. Since this is a loose ball play and the end of the related run must take place in or behind the neutral zone, this penalty's basic spot is the previous spot and should be enforced from there. In all cases, the forward passing must be legal in order for illegal touching to take place. Ineligible players must remain near their line of scrimmage during passing plays. An ineligible player who goes beyond the expanded neutral zone has committed an ineligible downfield foul. The expanded neutral zone is an area 2 yards behind the defensive line of scrimmage, so pass blockers can block a defender backwards, but no further than 2 yards. If an ineligible player goes beyond the neutral zone, he can't come back and be safe. Once he has gone past the expanded neutral zone, he's committed the foul. However, it can't be a foul until the ball is thrown legally forward. Up until this point, this play is a running play. Officials need to read their keys and see if the play is developing into a potential pass play. When we would determine that, we need to start watching for the ineligible players to make sure they don't go beyond the expanded neutral zone. If they do, remember it, and once the ball is thrown, drop a flag. Once the defender touches the ball in or behind the neutral zone, the restriction is lifted and ineligibles can move downfield. However, if the player goes beyond the neutral zone before the pass is released, they have still committed a foul. Ineligible player downfield is a 5-yard penalty that is enforced from the previous spot. Contact during passing plays have several different rules that are used depending on several criteria. We need to make sure we understand where the ball is and what the offensive players are doing to know when contact is legal or illegal downfield during the play. The opportunity to block a receiver downfield is opened once the ball has been touched by either the offense or the defense. Up to this point, there are restrictions on contact. There is a window of time for a defender to be able to legally contact an eligible receiver. The rulebook states that a defensive player shall not contact an eligible receiver who is no longer a potential blocker. The window closes when he is no longer a potential blocker. What does this mean? Once the receiver has gone past the defender, we know he is running his route. This leaves a lot of gray area for us to make judgment calls. We don't want to make this call unless it's blatantly obvious the offensive player has zero intention to block. There should be a time and space factor when making this call. The only time we should have a foul here is when there is enough time for the defensive player to realize a route is being ran, and that defensive player has to close down space in order to make this contact. Keep in mind, this is different than holding. We are looking for a block against a receiver that clearly throws him off his route. We want this call to be so obvious that everyone in the stadium can see it. If this does occur, it is an illegal use of hands foul, which carries a 10-yard penalty from the basic spot. Forward pass interference is defined as any player of A or B who is beyond the neutral zone that interferes with an eligible opponent's opportunity to move towards, catch, or bat a pass. There are a few conditions that must be met for pass interference to be called. First, the pass must be a legal forward pass that has crossed the neutral zone. If the ball isn't thrown beyond the neutral zone, interference is ignored. Also, if the defense touches the ball before it crosses the neutral zone, we can't have interference. There also can't be interference on an illegal pass, such as a second forward pass or a forward pass beyond the neutral zone. In these situations, it's going to take a crew coming together to discuss the play. A lot of times, the official who calls interference won't know that the pass was illegal. If an official has a foul for an illegal forward pass, the flag for pass interference must be picked up. Next, any contact that is in or behind the neutral zone by either team is ignored unless it's a personal foul. So, for example, if the offense runs a screen pass, the receiver can be legally contacted as long as he's still behind the neutral zone. However, he still can't be held as that is a foul. Finally, the contact must be with an eligible receiver for it to be pass interference. So, if a tight end who is covered up accidentally runs down the field, he can be contacted legally by the defense if the ball is thrown to him. In this instance, the offense has committed an ineligible player downfield foul, and if he touches the ball, it's illegal touching. The offense and defense have different restrictions when it comes to pass interference. For the offense, pass interference restrictions start at the snap and last until the ball is legally touched. The offense cannot initiate contact with a defender beyond the neutral zone. However, he can fight off contact by the defender so long as the defender initiates the contact. A common example we see of offensive pass interference is when an offense is running a mesh concept. The offensive players coming across each other cannot initiate contact with the defenders to knock them off of their defensive assignment. An offensive player also cannot engage a block if he is an eligible receiver beyond the neutral zone. Finally, contact with Team B linemen cannot be maintained beyond the expanded neutral zone. If we do have this situation, we have a penalty for an ineligible man downfield at the least. And if the ball is thrown near the defender, who might have an opportunity to catch the ball, we could have offensive pass interference at this point as well. Even though restrictions on the offense begins with a snap, we cannot have pass interference without a pass. If you see OPI during a play before the pass, hold the flag until the ball comes out. If it continues to be a running play, we won't have a flag. If a flag is thrown early, it will need to be picked up if the pass isn't thrown. Defensive pass interference begins once the ball has been released by the passer. Remember, up to this point, the defender can make legal contact with an offensive player until it becomes evident that he is running a pass route. We also can't have defensive pass interference against an ineligible receiver. This is another situation in which the crew will probably need to come together to discuss multiple fouls. An official might call DPI, but doesn't know that the player is ineligible. We need to confirm whether the player interfered with was in fact an eligible receiver. When dealing with interference, there are three important keys to keep in mind. First, all players have equal rights to the pass, both offensive and defensive. The offense does not have any advantage to the loose ball. A defender who has a clear opportunity of the ball cannot be interfered with by an offensive player. We need to be aware of who initiates contact in these situations. And sometimes we can have incidental contact between two players making a legitimate move towards the ball. We see this often when two players' legs bump into each other and both fall to the ground. Both were making a play towards the ball that they had equal right to and accidentally contacted each other. In this situation, we don't have interference. Next, the action must interfere with the opponent's chance to catch the pass. Contact that doesn't affect this is an interference. An example of this is contact that is clearly made away from the pass. Unless this contact is flagrant or a safety issue, it should be ignored. However, in NFHS rules, catchability does not affect pass interference. Contact with a player in the vicinity of the pass, even if the ball is completely over or underthrown, is still interference. So, if the contact is outside the right hash and the pass is towards the left hash, we can clearly state that this contact is away from the pass and is not interference. The restrictions on the offense start a lot sooner than on the defense. On forward passes, the offense's restriction for contact with the defense is once the ball is snapped. However, contact in the expanded neutral zone is ignored and is legal. but contact beyond this is illegal if the defender had a legitimate chance of catching the ball. Finally, contact is required to be pass interference. Years ago, face guarding was considered pass interference, but this was eliminated and the rule now requires contact to be involved for pass interference to be called. So a player is allowed to be just short of contact now without any restrictions. Pass interference is a 15-yard penalty that is enforced from the previous spot. The only exception to this is defensive pass interference that occurs on a play in which the offense scores a touchdown or a try, in which case the penalty can carry over to the try or to the kickoff at the offense's option. Roughing the passer should be a call only the referee makes. It is the referee's job to protect the passer, and he should follow the passer once the ball is thrown to make sure illegal contact is not made. Passers are considered defenseless players, and thus we need to make sure we pay close attention to help avoid letting defenses take cheap shots and hopefully reduce the chances of an injury. Roughing the passer has two elements to it. First, the defender must make an effort to avoid charging into the passer once it's clear the ball has been thrown. We have to make a judgment call first as to whether the defender could be relatively certain the ball has been thrown, and second, if there is anything the defender could do to avoid contact. Bang-bang situations in which the pass is gone and the defender makes contact are legal, as the defender could do nothing to avoid it once he's committed to it. However, a defender who can be sure the ball is gone must do everything possible to avoid the contact. There might still be slight contact, but if the defender is trying to get out of the way or significantly pulls up, we will ignore it. The second aspect of roughing the passer deals with personal fouls. Any of the personal fouls, when committed against a passer, is roughing the passer. This includes illegal helmet contact, targeting, face mask, etc. There is no timing requirement for this, even if the defender cannot be certain the ball is thrown. So, for example, a defender who grabs and twists the face mask of the passer even before the ball is released is roughing the passer. Roughing the passer is a 15-yard personal foul penalty and also carries an automatic first down. It also has special enforcement regulations. The penalty can be enforced from the dead ball spot if the play ends beyond the neutral zone with no change of possession. Otherwise, if the play ends behind the neutral zone with an incomplete pass or with Team B in possession, the enforcement spot is the previous spot.